So the Red Book, and still the 2nd of August, of course, and Scrutiny section, second sermon to the dead. That night Philemon stood beside me, and the dead drew near and lined the walls and cried out. This is Jan 31, 1916. We want to know about God. Where is God? Is God dead? Jung commented later on Nietzsche's Death of God. When Nietzsche said God is dead, he expressed a truth which is valid for the greater part of Europe. To Nietzsche's statement, Jung noted, however, it would be more correct to say he has discarded our image. And where will we find him again? We want to know about God. Where is God? Is God dead? But Philemon rose and said, and this is the second sermon to the dead, God is not dead. He is as alive as ever. God is creation, for he is something definite and therefore differentiated from the pleroma. God is a quality of the pleroma, and everything I've said about creation also applies to him. But he is distinct from creation in that he is much more indefinite and indeterminable. He is less differentiated than creation, since the ground of his creation is effective fullness. Only insofar as he is definite and differentiated is he creation, and as such, he is the manifestation of the effective fullness of the pleroma. Everything that we do not differentiate falls into the pleroma and is cancelled out by its opposite. If, therefore, we do not differentiate God, effective fullness is cancelled out for us. Moreover, God is the pleroma itself, just as each smallest point in the created and uncreated is the pleroma itself. Effective emptiness is the essence of the devil. God and devil are the first manifestations of nothingness, which we call the pleroma. It makes no difference whether the pleroma exists or not, since it cancels itself out completely. Not so creation. Insofar as God and the devil are created beings, they do not cancel each other out, but stand one against the other as effective opposites. We need no proof of their existence. It is enough that we have to keep speaking about them. Even if both were not, creation would forever distinguish them anew out of the pleroma on account of their distinct essences. Everything that differentiation takes out of the pleroma is a pair of opposites. Therefore, the devil always belongs to God. This inseparability is most intimate, and as you know from experience, as indissoluble in your life as the pleroma itself, since both stand very close to the pleroma in which all opposites are cancelled out and united. Fullness and emptiness, generation and destruction are what distinguish God and the devil. Effectiveness is common to both. Effectiveness joins them. Effectiveness, therefore, stands above both and is a God above God, since it unites fullness and emptiness through its effectuality. This is a God you knew nothing about, because mankind forgot him. We call him by his name Abraxas. He is even more indefinite than God and the devil. And there's a footnote. In 1932, Jung commented on Abraxas, the Gnostic symbol Abraxas, a made-up name meaning 365. The Gnostics used it as the name of their supreme deity. He was a time god. In the philosophy of Bergson, Jula la durée créatrice, it's French, is apparently is an expression of the same idea. Jung described him in a way that echoes his description here. Quote, just as this archetypal world of the collective unconscious is exceedingly paradoxical, always yea and nay, that figure of Abraxas means the beginning and the end. It is life and death, therefore it is represented by a monstrous figure. It is a monster because it is the life of vegetation in the course of one year, the spring and the autumn, the summer and the winter, the yea and the nay of nature. So Abraxas is really identical with the Demiurgus, the world creator. And as such, he is surely identical with the Purusha or with Shiva. Jung added that Abraxas was usually represented with the head of a fowl, the body of a man, and the tail of a serpent. But there is also the lion-headed symbol with the dragon's body, the head crowned with the 12 rays, alluding to the number of months. Apparently, according to Saint Irenaeus, Basilides held that the ruler of them is named Abraxas, and that is why this ruler has the number 365 within it. Ruler of who is not clear. Featured in Albrecht Dietrich's work, that's Abraxas, closely studied by Jung. Anyway, that's about Abraxas. And then, so this is a God we know nothing about. This is a God you knew nothing about because mankind forgot him. We call him by his name Abraxas. He's even more indefinite than God and the devil. To distinguish him from God, we call God Helios or Sun, as in S-U-N. Abraxas is effect. Nothing stands opposed to him but the ineffective. Hence, his effective nature unfolds itself freely. The ineffective neither exists nor resists. Abraxas stands above the sun and above the devil. He is improbable probability, that which takes unreal effect. If the pleroma had an essence, Abraxas would be its manifestation. He is the effectual itself, not any particular effect, but effect in general. He takes unreal effect because he has no definite effect. He is also creation, since he is distinct from the pleroma. The sun has a definite effect, and so does the devil. S-U-N. The sun has a definite effect, and so does the devil. Therefore, they appear to us more effective than the indefinite Abraxas. He is force, duration, change. The dead now raised a great tumult, for they were Christians. But when Philemon had ended his speech, one after another the dead also stepped back into the darkness once more, and with the noise of their outrage gradually died away in the distance. When all the clamor had passed, I turned to Philemon and exclaimed, "Pity us, wisest one. You take from men the gods to whom they could pray. You take alms from the beggar, bread from the hungry, fire from the freezing." Philemon answered and said, "My son, these dead have had to reject the belief of the Christians, and therefore they can pray to no God. So should I teach them a God in whom they can believe and to whom they can pray? That is precisely what they have rejected. Why did they reject it? They had to reject it because they could not do otherwise. And why did they have no other choice? Because the world, without these men knowing it, entered into that month of the great year, where one should believe only what one knows." Reference to the Platonic months. "That is difficult enough, but it is also a remedy for the long sickness that arose from the fact that one believed what one did not know. I teach them the God whom both I and they know of. I teach them the God whom both I and they know of without being aware of him, a God in whom one does not believe, and to whom one does not pray, but of whom one knows. I teach this God to the dead, since they desired entry and teaching, but I do not teach him to living men, since they did not desire my teaching. Why indeed should I teach them? Therefore I take them Therefore I take away from them no kindly hearer of prayers, their Father in heaven. What concern is my foolishness to the living? The dead need salvation, since they are a great waiting flock, hovering over their graves, and long for the knowledge that belief and the rejection of belief have breathed their last. But whoever has fallen ill and is near death wants knowledge, and he sacrifices pardon." "It appears," I replied, "as if you teach a terrible and dreadful God beyond measure, to whom God and evil and human suffering are joy and to whom God and evil and human suffering and joy are nothing." "My son," said Philemon, "did you not see that these dead had a God of love and rejected him? Should I teach them a loving God? They had to reject him after already having long since rejected the evil God whom they call the devil. Therefore, they must know a God to whom everything created is nothing, because he himself is the creator, and everything created and the destruction of everything created. Have they not rejected a God who is a father, a lover, good and beautiful, one whom they thought to have particular qualities and a particular being? Therefore, I must teach a God to whom nothing can be attributed, who has all qualities, and therefore none, because only I and they can know such a God. But how, O my father, can men unite in such a God? Does the knowledge of such a God not amount to destroying human bonds in every society based on the good and beautiful?" Philemon answered, "These dead rejected the God of love, of the good and the beautiful. They had to reject him, and so they rejected unity and community in love, in the good and the beautiful, and thus they killed one another and dissolved the community of men. Should I teach them the God who united them in love and whom they rejected? Therefore I teach them a God who dissolves unity, who blasts everything human, who powerfully creates and mightily destroys. Those whom love does not fear, those whom love does not unite, fear compels." And as Philemon spoke these words, he bent down swiftly to the ground, touched it with his hand, and disappeared. That being the second sermon to the dead in third section of the Red Book, Scrutinies.